Welcome to Pod AIcast_official. This is the third and final part of our deep dive into the fascinating world of charisma.
Our final dive into what it really means to influence, to connect, and ultimately to lead.
Exactly. And over the last two segments, we've really built the foundation, haven't we? We identified that charismatic tripod of presence, power, and warmth.
And we established that it's not an act.
hmm
It really originates from your internal state, your confidence, your empathy, and it just projects outward.
Right. So if you missed those discussions on, how to create that instant connection or manage your own internal state, I really do recommend going back to check them out.
They're crucial.
They are. And while you're thinking about it, please take a second to hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out and ensures you never miss a deep dive.
Indeed. I mean, those first two parts were all about the internal prep, getting your toolkit ready. Today, though, today is different.
How so?
Today is where we move past the theory and, get into the high-stakes application. We're taking all those skills, that ability to project warmth, to hold power, and we're applying them to the moments that really matter.
Okay, so our mission today is to go beyond the basics. We're tackling what happens when the pressure is on.
That's right.
We're talking about how to wield charisma in an intense conflict when you have to deliver criticism or in a genuine crisis.
During presentations, too.
Uh-huh.
And maybe most importantly, how you handle the shadow side, the challenges and the isolation that come from being that influential.
That's a really interesting point.
Well, this segment is all about managing unpredictability. And for you, the listener, the learner, you're looking for knowledge that's, quick to absorb, but also deeply actionable.
These aren't just theories.
Not at all. These are practical maneuvers. They're designed to give you an immediate edge in those really tough social and professional situations.
Okay, let's unpack this. And let's start where we left off, that inner game of nonverbal power. We talked about eye contact, but let's go deeper into why it's not just important, but really the primary tool of charisma.
It's primary because it's the fastest path to connection. It's almost instant.
So what is it communicating in that instant?
Three things, really. Empathy, wisdom, and focused attention. When a charismatic person looks at you, you feel, just for that moment, like you're the only person in the world.
And that sustained, thoughtful eye contact is what achieves that.
Instantly.
There's some fascinating science behind this, isn't there? We're not just talking about a feeling, the psychological connection. It's chemical.
Precisely. Researchers, like Helen Fisher, have looked into the physiology of it. And they've found that intense eye contact, it's a neurotransmitter that, it plays a massive role in attraction and infatuation. It's one of the key chemicals behind that feeling of, love at first sight.
So on a biological level, deep eye contact can literally increase affection. But we have to be so careful here, right? A stare can feel aggressive.
Oh, absolutely.
So how do we make sure we're triggering that connection, that chemical reaction, and not somebody's defensive instincts?
And that is the critical distinction. It's the difference between a tense, aggressive stare and a relaxed, sustained attention. Tense eyes signal that you're uncomfortable.
Or anxious, or that you're trying to assert dominance in a negative way.
Exactly. That tension, you can see it around the forehead, the corners of the eyes. It just defeats the entire purpose of projecting warmth and presence.
So how do we practice this? A relaxed, charismatic gaze sounds... Well, it sounds hard to just turn on, especially if you're nervous.
It does, but the sources give us this brilliant three-step technique. They call it the soft focus exercise.
And it's designed to relax your nervous system.
Instantly. So step one, just close your eyes for a second. Quick reset.
Yeah.
Step two, focus on the empty space around you. Imagine the air, the void, not the solid objects.
Oh.
Then, step three, open your eyes, but maintain that focus. Let your gaze take in the space that's filled by the world instead of fixating on the person you're looking at.
That's fascinating. It's almost like a mindfulness technique that you're applying in the middle of a social interaction.
It is. Because when you focus on the space instead of the object, your whole nervous system it calms down.
And the result is a gaze that's open and relaxed, not intense.
You're projecting calmness, deep attention, not fixation. And it's a simple, quick mental shift that completely transforms the nonverbal message you're sending.
Wow. And you could do that right before walking into a tough meeting.
And you'd already be miles ahead.
Okay, so that's a powerful tool. Let's move from the eyes to the rest of the body. We know body language establishes confidence before a single word is spoken.
Absolutely. The body's impact on the mind is burned. It's profound. Before your mouth even opens, your posture has already sent a full report on your confidence level.
And everyone else in the room has already read it.
Non-verbally, yes.
Yeah.
And this is where we come back to that idea of occupying space.
The gorilla stance, or the Grunfeld principle, I think it was called, after Deborah Grun.
So that's the one. Grunenfeld observed that people who see themselves as powerful, they instinctively take up more physical space.
You see it in meetings all the time. The person who leans back drapes an arm over the next chair.
Puts their feet up on a coffee table. They're signaling ownership of their environment. It is the exact opposite of contracting, of tucking your limbs in, making yourself small.
Which signals anxiety.
Low power, yes.
There was that great anecdote in the sources about Ella, the student boxer at Stanford. Her coach gave her a very specific instruction.
Yes. Ella was really talented, but she seemed meek outside the ring. So her coach challenged her. He told her to walk through the busiest part of the Stanford quad.
At peak time.
At peak time. And critically, to force everyone else to move out of her way. She wasn't allowed to change her path, no apologizing.
And the result was this immediate, palpable shift in her internal state. She wasn't just walking. She was projecting this belief that her space mattered.
That is nonverbal dominance in action. It's the mental game that, great boxers use before the bell even rings. You establish dominance before a punch is thrown.
The charismatic person is non-verbally saying, I belong here. My presence has value.
Like the gorilla. It simply occupies its territory, and others naturally make way.
So for the listener, how do we apply this? I mean, we can't all start bumping into people in the hallway. What are the actual steps to trigger that confidence boost?
Well, the sources detail a practical 7-step process. It's designed to physically and hormonally create confidence. It starts with the foundation, breathing.
Making sure it's relaxed abdominal breathing, not that shallow chest breathing.
Exactly. Then you focus on structure. You stand tall, maybe gently stretch your arms up, roll your shoulders back and down.
Okay, breath and structure. What's next?
The third step is stability. Your feet should feel stable, a little wide, rooted to the ground. You're literally taking up your space.
So we're establishing a relaxed breath, expanding our frame, and rooting ourselves.
Right. And next is expansion of the chest.
Yeah.
You push it out slightly. It's not aggressive. It opens the lungs, and it signals vulnerability, which is paradoxically a power move.
Interesting.
Then you have neutrality in your face, that soft focus gaze we talked about. Sixth is slow movement. Powerful people are deliberate, not jerky. And finally, projection. You imagine a bubble of calm confidence radiating out from your core.
And there's hard data on this. This isn't just a feeling. It's measurable.
It is. Adopting this stance directly manipulates your biochemistry. Studies show that a 2-minute power pose, like the gorilla, leads to a significant increase, about 19% in testosterone.
The dominance hormone.
And at the same time, a big decrease, around 25% in cortisol, the stress hormone.
That is profound. It means you don't have to wait to feel confident. You can adopt the posture, and that creates the feeling.
Exactly. It's a physical hack for your brain.
Yeah.
Use your body to trick your mind into feeling dominant and calm. You're changing your internal chemistry from fight or flight to calm assertion.
So, while adopting power is key, getting rid of the insecure signals is just as important. The sources defined a few non-calm behaviors to avoid.
These are basically leakage. They're signals of deep insecurity or this unconscious need for external validation. Charismatic people project a quiet security. They don't need your approval.
And the first one is surprisingly common, the bubble head syndrome.
Yes, excessive head nodding. Nodding once is fine, it shows you're listening, but nodding 3, 4, 5 times while someone is talking.
It looks nervous, desperate for approval.
Or just unfocused. You're spending energy on moving instead of listening. It weakens your gravitas.
And the second is the overuse of verbal reassurances.
The constant, right, I agree. Sometimes multiple times in one sentence. It comes from a good place, trying to show empathy, but it often reads as insecurity.
Like you're afraid they'll think you aren't listening hard enough.
Right. Charismatic listening is silent. It's focused. It's deep. It's not noisy and interruptive.
And the third is just general restlessness, playing with your hair, tapping your feet.
Fiddling with your clothes, shuffling papers. All of it signals anxiety. It shows you're trying to burn off nervous energy because you don't feel secure just being there.
And if you're not comfortable, they won't be either.
It's contagious.
Yeah.
The best advice here is, well, it's a bit painful. Film yourself talking.
Oh, wow.
And watch it back with the sound off. You will see every single signal of insecurity you thought you were hiding.
That's a powerful and probably humbling exercise.
It's the fastest way to self-awareness. Charisma demands a quiet confidence. So if you struggle with this, practice deliberate stillness, root yourself, use the soft focus, and just decide that for the next minute, you will move nothing but your mouth and your eyes.
That's a fantastic foundation. So if mastering our internal state and our physical space lets us project that confidence, let's talk about what happens when we have to use it against direct opposition. This moves us into segment 2, charisma in conflict and criticism.
Conflict is the real proving ground, isn't it? When you're dealing with difficult people, hostile groups, people who are just predisposed to disagree, your standard approach can fail.
So charisma here is about strategic segmentation.
The strategy is called divide and conquer. Now that sounds aggressive, but the application is really about tailored influence, not manipulation.
It's about being effective.
Exactly. The key insight is that hostility in a group often comes from individual needs that haven't been met. The sources tell that story of the CEO trying to get approval from an international leadership team.
8 of them, all highly opinionated.
Right, and trying to persuade them all at once was just a recipe for gridlock.
So instead of fighting the resistance head-on, the CEO was advised to meet them one-on-one before the big meeting. Why is that so effective?
Because it lets the leader personalize the charismatic approach for each individual. In a group, people feel like they have to perform their dissent for their peers.
But one-on-one, the guard comes down.
It does. The CEO found that one director felt chronically overlooked, a classic case of needing warmth and focus.
So for that person, the CEO just used deep listening, soft focus, and expressed genuine appreciation. The problem wasn't the plan, it was the relationship.
Correct. And the dissent just melted away because that individual's core need for respect was finally met.
And for another director,
Another one was facing huge uncertainty in their local market. They didn't need warmth. They needed maximum power and a bold, clear vision of stability.
so by tailoring the mix of power and warmth in these individual meetings, the CEO turned resistors into allies before the big meeting even started.
They were invested in the solution before the group ever convened. It's a very sophisticated maneuver.
It is. You're neutralizing the opposition by addressing the emotional deficit before the conflict goes public, which ties perfectly into another technique, the Ben Franklin effect.
Ah, the Ben Franklin effect. It's
Yeah.
a beautiful piece of applied psychology.
So Franklin wanted to win over a political rival. What did he do?
He asked the man to lend him a rare book. The rival, surprisingly, complied. The principle here leverages cognitive dissonance.
Explain that dissonance for us.
Well, if the rival hated Franklin, but he still did him a favor, his brain has a logical conflict. So to resolve that conflict, the brain rationalizes the action by changing the attitude.
I did Franklin a favor, so I must not dislike him that much. In fact, I must kinda like him.
Exactly. And the modern application isn't about asking for a book. It's asking for their advice, their opinion.
Because asking for advice makes the person feel valued, invested.
Precisely. You go to a resistant colleague and say, I know you have incredible expertise in X, and I really need your opinion on how this might impact Y. You're not showing neediness, you're showing respect.
And by consulting them, you make them a co-owner of the plan.
That's the psychological payoff. They are far less likely to oppose a project they've helped shape. The act of giving advice forces them to conclude, I support this person and their mission.
A masterclass in diplomacy. Okay, let's talk about a situation where that skill is pushed to its absolute limit, delivering bad news.
This is where so many leaders fail. And it's often because of the delivery, not the content. The sources use that perfect cautionary tale of the manager, Xavier, getting that anxious voicemail from Susan.
Oh, that message was a complete disaster. It was full of apology, vagueness. Don't think I'm insulting you. This is difficult to talk about.
And that is the crucial error. That kind of vagueness immediately activates the recipient's defensive brain. The amygdala goes into overdrive.
So Xavier spent the entire day imagining the worst-case scenario.
He ended up dreading the conversation because of Susan's delivery. Her anxiety amplified the perceived danger of the news itself.
So delivering bad news charismatically, it requires preparation, empathy, and absolute control over your nonverbals.
Preparation is everything. Timing is critical. Never deliver bad news when someone is exhausted or rushed. But more importantly, you have to flood the encounter with warmth and presence first.
Which brings us back to that crucial insight. In high-stress situations, our brain registers the messenger's emotional state, their calm or their stress, before it even processes the words.
Your nonverbals are talking directly to the survival brain, bypassing logic. If you walk in tense, fidgeting, apologetic, they will instantly feel stressed and put up a defensive wall no matter how empathetic your words are.
So the charismatic approach here is all about prioritizing composure. How do we do that?
First, you maintain your internal composure. Soft focus, gorilla stance, relaxed breath. Second, you lead with genuine, unhurried warmth. A compassionate tone and a soft gaze tell them they are safe with you, even if the news is bad.
And then be clear about the news itself.
Concise and clear. Avoid ambiguity. The goal is to radiate calmness and care, assuring them that the relationship is secure and you're there to support them through whatever comes next.
That takes immense discipline. Now, a related topic, charismatic criticism. It's often called the hardest part of leadership.
It is, because if you do it poorly, you create resentment. If you don't do it at all, standards drop.
So there's a 4-step method to make sure it lands constructively. And step 1 is all about context and empathy.
Yes, context means you never, ever criticize in public. Always private. But more importantly, means adopting a sympathetic mindset before you even open your mouth. The psychological trick is to imagine a respected elder watching you deliver the criticism.
Why that visualization?
It forces you to elevate your behavior. It ensures your internal state stays empathetic and stops you from slipping into anger or judgment. If you feel judgmental, your body language will give you away instantly.
You have to convey, I'm doing this because I value you.
Not because I enjoy correcting you. Exactly.
Okay, step 2 is where most people fail. Be specific. Focus on observable behavior, not personality.
This distinction is everything. When you attack personality, why are you always late? You're so unreliable. The person hears, I am flawed, and their defenses shoot up.
But when you criticize a behavior,
The report was delivered 5 hours late, and the consequence of that was X. You're focusing on an action that can be changed, not a character flaw.
so instead of sweeping judgments, you use consequence-based language.
Absolutely. You frame it around the impact on the team or the goal. Instead of, why did you ignore the procedure? You say, when the procedure was bypassed, the consequence was the client flagged an error, and that makes me anxious for our reputation.
So the focus is on the outcome, not their moral failing. Then step 3 is about eliminating blame.
This means avoiding language that demands an excuse. Don't start with, why couldn't you do X? That just forces them to defend themselves.
So what do you say instead?
You use forward-looking, partnership language. You start with appreciation. I appreciate the effort you put in under pressure. Then you pivot. What could we do differently next time to ensure the timeline is met without that stress?
So you're collaborating on a future solution, not prosecuting a past mistake.
It shifts the whole dynamic. Goes from a parent scolding a child to 2 professionals analyzing a system's failure.
And finally, step 4, end on forward momentum.
Never let the conversation end on the correction. You have to conclude by agreeing on the next concrete steps. You express genuine gratitude for their willingness to listen, and you share an optimistic outlook.
You're reassuring them that the relationship is safe and focused on growth.
And that positive closing statement is often what they'll remember most vividly.
That's a great toolkit for one-on-one influence. Let's move now to segment 3 and apply these skills on a larger scale. High-stakes charisma in presentations, remote work, and crisis leadership.
Right. Charisma in a presentation is really about persuasion. And persuasion requires absolute clarity.
So the most charismatic presenters master simplicity and structure.
They do. The sources recommend aiming for really clear, simple language, something like a 10th grade reading level.
Why is that so important?
Because you are competing with 1,000 distractions in your audience's minds. Their phones, their lunch, their next meeting. If your language is too dense or academic, they will check out. Complexity is the enemy of charisma.
And structure is just as vital for making the message stick.
Absolutely. The human brain has a severe limitation here. We struggle to remember more than 4 items in a single group. So the core message of any charismatic presentation has to be structured around just 3 to 5 main points,
You distill everything down to the essentials.
ensuring high recall long after you've left the stage.
But 3 points can still be dry. How do we make them memorable?
Storytelling. Facts tell, but stories sell. Charismatic presentations use engaging anecdotes and compelling metaphors to bring statistics to life.
The example in the material about renaming groups of people was perfect.
Yes, instead of calling them unemployed people in a policy brief, you call them treasure hunters.
That reframing immediately changes the whole feeling. It imbues the data with a sense of potential, of bravery.
It transforms a negative statistic into a compelling narrative. Stories engage the emotional brain. The audience remembers the story, and the critical point embedded within it comes along for the ride.
And to really amplify the impact of those stories, we need to talk about the power of silence, mastering the dramatic pause.
The ability to pause is a huge signal of confidence. Intentional silence lets the audience fully absorb the weight of what you just said.
And when we're nervous, we tend to speed up, right?
Our brain is in overdrive. So intentionally slowing your pace, especially with measured pauses, makes you seem more thoughtful, more authoritative, more in control.
There was that story about the 18-year-old speaker who was just paralyzed with anxiety. His solution was so simple.
He was disciplined. After that first failure, he just wrote, "breathe," on his notes before every major point. That simple cue forced him to build in those calming, intentional pauses.
And that pause holds the listener in suspense.
They stop thinking about their response and they wait, breath held, for you to continue. It's a subtle act of dominance and incredible focus.
Okay, let's shift to remote charisma. On a phone call, we lose almost all of these nonverbal cues. How do we compensate?
Since you lose the visuals, your focus has to be absolute. The number one rule of phone charisma is to eliminate multitasking.
Don't chew, don't type, don't check email.
The person on the other end will hear those micro-distractions, and they will interpret them as a lack of presence. They'll feel like they're not important enough for your undivided attention.
So we have to physically compensate for the lack of visual connection.
We do. A powerful technique is to stand up and walk around while you're talking. Use the same expressive body language you would in person. Gesture, smile, nod your head.
Even if you're alone in your office.
You might look a bit silly, but that movement and expression translates directly into a more energetic, engaging vocal tone. People can hear a smile in your voice.
So if the phone is about tone, email charisma is about structure and focus. How do you convey warmth or power through text?
Email charisma is all about focusing intensely on the recipient, sometimes called the J-layer connection principle in this context.
So when you draft an email, it's natural to focus on your own agenda first.
Of course. But the charismatic move is what you do before you hit send. You rearrange the text. You make sure that the recipient's value, their concerns, and the positive impact of their involvement are all right at the very top. You front-load the email with warmth and justification.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. A non-charismatic email starts, "I need the Q4 report by Friday because I have a meeting." The charismatic version begins, "Thank you for the excellent work you've been doing on Q4. Given how important your insights are for the executive meeting, could you prioritize getting the draft to me by Friday?"
So you're acknowledging their value and making the request a matter of necessity, not just an obligation.
It builds immediate rapport. You're showing them that you chose them because their contribution is essential to success.
We are getting deep into these core techniques now, and we're about to cover perhaps the biggest challenge of all, charisma in a crisis. If you are finding these insights useful and you want to keep elevating your professional edge, please take just a moment right now to subscribe to PodAIcast_official.
Okay, so let's talk about charisma in crisis. Times of massive upheaval, corporate, military, whatever it is, they're huge opportunities for charismatic leadership. When panic sets in, people instinctively flock to individuals who project unshakable calm.
The sources use that dramatic example of Napoleon's comeback to illustrate this.
His return from exile in 1815 is the ultimate study. He had no army, no money, no mandate. But through sheer presence, confidence, and a compelling vision, he won back the entire French army, one interaction at a time.
And the lesson there is that in a crisis, people need a bold vision that transcends the immediate trouble.
Absolutely. The process starts with the leader's internal composure, which is severely tested under that kind of pressure.
You have to actively use those internal tools we talked about. Soft focus, positive reframing, to neutralize your own stress hormones.
Because your audience is already panicked. Your calmness will have an exaggerated soothing effect on them.
And once you've established composure, you have to communicate high expectations and that clear vision.
High expectations are vital. The sources mention that study of the women raising funds for multiple sclerosis. Simply by being told they were excellent and deeply valued, they performed at a much higher level.
So charismatic crisis leader says, "I know you are capable of this, and I expect greatness from you."
And then they paint a magnificent future. George H.W. Bush, despite winning the Gulf War, was criticized for ignoring what he called the vision thing.
Leaders who only address the immediate problems fail to inspire.
Right. Charisma uses the crisis as a launching pad to communicate an exciting future that demands a collective effort.
Which is a perfect transition into our final segment, the shadow side and responsible charisma. What happens when all these techniques work and you become this magnet for influence?
Well, charisma is a powerful magnet, but magnets attract friction too. While it draws admiration, it also attracts intense resentment and jealousy. As your success increases, they stop seeing you as an equal.
And this creates a dangerous isolation, especially for high-level leaders.
It's severe. CEOs often find that people stop giving them honest feedback. They stop disagreeing. They start seeing them as this superhuman persona.
Which prevents genuine connection and lets your blind spots grow.
So to combat that, the solution isn't to diminish yourself. It's to actively share credit and reinforce the value of others.
And this brings us to that critical technique for managing resentment, the JALIR technique.
JALIR. It's a structured way to reflect greatness back onto your team. It stands for justification, appreciation, laying out impact, and responsibility.
Let's start with J and A, justification and appreciation.
This is the foundation. You have to thank them specifically. Generic praise is worthless. You have to justify why you're appreciating them. Thank you, Maria, for the speed and accuracy on that budget reconciliation.
Okay, now the L, laying out impact. This seems to be the most critical step.
It is the emotional multiplier. You must describe the positive effect their contribution had on you personally. Think of that example of the banker, Nancy, whose colleague Kevin was getting resentful.
She stopped apologizing for her success and started connecting his work directly to her wins.
So instead of just saying, thanks for the data, she would say, Kevin, the flawless data you built allowed me to present to the board without a single interruption. Your work there fundamentally changed how I felt walking into that room. I had total confidence thanks to you.
Wow. That makes his contribution feel profoundly meaningful.
It reduces that feeling of being overlooked. And finally, our responsibility. Ownership. You make them feel like an indispensable part of your success.
You're making them a partner in the win.
Yes. Nancy convinced Kevin his role was essential to the entire project structure. He's not a subordinate, he's a core partner. When people feel ownership, they don't resent the leader's success because they own a piece of it.
JLR is a fantastic method for maintaining those relationships. Now, let's talk about a really challenging side effect of that deep connection, the risk of followers oversharing, the soft landing.
Yes. That charismatic connection can be so intense that people feel this profound instant trust. And it can lead them to share deeply personal, sometimes harmful epiphanies too soon.
It feels like a moment of magic. But then comes what the sources call post-magic shame.
The post-magic shame. It's like waking up the day after a wild night out and feeling deep regret. They realize they shared way too much with a leader, and they might even retreat or avoid you entirely.
So the leader has to intervene responsibly to protect them from that future regret. How do you execute the soft landing without rejecting their vulnerability?
It's a very delicate maneuver. First, you have to recognize when the sharing is about to cross a line, and you gently interrupt.
And the interruption has to be relational.
Yes, you redirect by sharing a small, managed vulnerability of your own, or telling a story that parallels theirs. You might say, I know exactly how that feels. I remember a time when I had a revelation just like that.
So you pause their outpouring and shift the focus away from their specific shame-inducing detail.
You interrupt the flow, you validate the feeling, and then you gently shift the topic back to concrete, manageable steps, the next mile. You assure them their revelations are safe, but you pivot back to the professional. You're bringing them back to ground level.
This all reinforces that final, sober reminder from the sources. Charisma is a powerful tool. Like a surgeon's knife, it can be used for good or for harm.
And it is not a substitute for ethics or intellect.
Yeah.
We have to remember that Marshall Goldsmith, quote, charisma is like intelligence. If you're going down the wrong road, it only helps you get there faster. The ultimate goal is responsible power.
And responsible power means accepting your own humanity.
Absolutely. To avoid that superhuman trap, you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable, imperfect, approachable. That doesn't diminish your authority. It increases your relational capacity and trust.
That brings us to the end of this journey. We've covered the full scope, presence, power, warmth, and applying it all in conflict, crisis, and presentations.
And we can summarize that whole transformation by remembering the story of Jim, the young professional who was technically gifted but always overlooked.
Jim was a diamond in the rough. He had all this potential, but his nonverbals were working against him. His quiet voice, no eye contact, contracted posture. People thought he wasn't confident.
So his transformation wasn't about getting smarter. The talent was always there. The change was entirely external. He learned the soft focus gaze. He adopted the gorilla stance. He modulated his voice. He learned the behaviors that finally reflected the talent that was always inside him.
He didn't suddenly get smarter. He just learned how to polish the diamond. And his colleagues were stunned. He went from being ignored to being seen as a star just by changing the cues he was sending.
And that's the final thought, isn't it? Charisma isn't about becoming someone new. It's about giving permission to the star within to finally manifest externally. It's the bridge between your internal competence and your external influence.
That is the most powerful takeaway here. This ability doesn't rely on some magical gifts you're born with. It's about the habitual, deliberate mastery of these specific learned behaviors.
Exactly.
We really encourage you to try these techniques. Do the gorilla stance before your next important call, or use the JLR method with a colleague and make them habitual.
Consistency is what turns technique into innate charisma. It takes discipline, but the payoff in influence and connection is immense.
Thank you for joining us for this final part of our deep dive into the mechanics of charisma. We really hope you'll subscribe to PodAIcast_official and maybe share this with someone else who would appreciate these insights.
That was the end of this deep dive. Thank you for listening, and until next time, goodbye.